On this episode of Mighty Car Mods, we are continuing work on my Ford Falcon XR8, a project that is proudly supported by our friends at Ryobi. But this episode is so big that by the end of this video, the car will be finished. We're talking suspension, we're talking brakes, we've got new wheels coming, we've got some painting, the Haltech's going on, we're doing a tune, we're gonna do our final power runs to see how much power we made, and yes, I will be making some improvements to my car with a reciprocating saw. Now this here, traditionally, is a tool that is used for cutting up junk, and I will be using it today to cut up my Ford Falcon, which is not junk. Well, not really. Welcome to another episode of Mighty Car Mods. This project is proudly supported by our friends at Ryobi, so I thought I'd quickly show you the tools that we're going to use in this episode to get this car finished. Now, we have got lots of suspension and braking stuff to do, so of course we've got our big impact wrench and our little DAC as well. Also, our 3/8 articulating head, little side DAC, that gets a bit of a work in as well. All of our lights, of course, which is our bendy light, and these little ones, we use them heaps around the car because they are magnetic. You can stick them on things, you can articulate them in different ways, plus they've got different brightness settings. We've got those. We've got some interior mods going on today because we are installing a hydraulic handbrake. So to do that, we've got our 90-degree side drill like that. And we also have the Ryobi rotary tool because we're going to be cutting up some plastics. We also are going to be using the angle grinder. We're cutting some stuff up, using it both with a cutting disc but also with a flap disc. Speaking of which, to clean out the rear subframe, we also need a flat wheel on here as well because we need to put some new bushes in there and the collars are very tight. And we're going to get them out by cutting them with a reciprocating saw like this. You can run different blades on this. You can cut all sorts of stuff with this, really. You can do masonry, you can do wood even, you can do all sorts of stuff, but we're cutting metal with it today, which is why that's on there. I'm doing some painting because I got some new wheels and I got a very, very special color, which I hope you'll like, to speed up that process, a heat gun, and then to clear out all of the fumes. This is our shop fan. Now this is a hybrid unit, which means it runs on the same batteries as everything else, but you can also run it off mains, which is awesome. And lastly, to clean up all the mess that is falling out of this Falcon, we've got the Ryobi One Plus shop vac. Now, other than this thing being really powerful, what I like about it is how quiet it is. You've got heaps of power and the thing is just not that loud. So you will be seeing each and all of these tools throughout this build, and today's episode is absolutely freaking huge. We've got lots of people coming down. Benny from Benny's Custom Works, Chris from Shockworks is going to be here. We're going to see Scotty later on from Haltech. We've got Dale and we've got Anthony from Castle Hill Performance. It's going to be absolutely huge, and our first job is dropping the subframe and throwing most of it in the bin. We are dropping the entire rear subframe assembly, and pretty much everything in it is going to go in the bin because it is well and truly thrashed. The wheels are also going in the bin because I've found some new ones off Marketplace that are going to be perfect, and I've got a fun plan for those. The brakes are also going to be getting a tickle in this episode, front and back, and check out what I've found under the back seat. $1 off the asking price after all, a bottle lid and a piece of Jenga. All things pointing towards just some of the exciting activities that must have been taking place in the back seat of this Ford Falcon. This here is the complete rear subframe assembly, and I can tell you, my friends, that a lot of this stuff is going in the bin, such as this, and then the diff. All of the bushes on that, they're completely flogged, so they're going in the bin, and the diff itself, we're going to throw it in the bin, and the bin will magically weld it, and when we pull it out, it'll do better skids. Why are we changing all of this stuff? I know it's to skid, but can you give me a little bit more depth into why we're going to skid better?
Yes, so factory bushes give better compliance for ride quality, but you have a lot of take-up where the arm has to move before the tyre turns. So with that direction change, you have less consistency. It just makes the car feel a lot tighter and generally a lot sharper.
Yeah. I mean, the condition of this is just like, if I grab this bump stop here, like this is the condition we're playing with, people. Like, this car is just completely thrashed. And even though it didn't have high Ks, like 170,000 or whatever, it feels like it's right at the point where everything is breaking. The fuel tank is leaking, the diff is leaking, everything's broken. Is this what it's like owning a Ford?
If you buy one at the exact amount of Ks, absolutely. The good thing is, this took about half an hour, 45 minutes to drop, all said and done. So, you know, if you have a table and a two-post hoist, this could be a pretty reasonable job if you take it on.
And you reckon in less than 30 minutes we'll have everything done and back in the car?
We'll have it less than 30 seconds with good editing, for sure.
Hello, mate.
How are you?
It's so good to see you. Thanks for coming down.
Yeah, Falcon, spicy.
We've spent way too much money on this already. My mate Benny has arrived to help save the day. Benny, you actually have one of these cars, and like me, you wanted to make a cheap drift car and then realised it wasn't possible.
Well, I mean, this is cheap in the scheme of drift cars these days because everything that we know and love, S chassis, R chassis, even IS 200, IS 300, those cars are now worth 5 times what they used to be worth. So
yes.
The base car is now what the budget used to be for a completed car. So now these things step in place. I actually went to a drift event last night and over 90% of the field was Falcons and Commodores.
Really?
There was 2 really nice Silvias and I'm like, man, that's a house deposit now.
The diff itself, do we weld it? Is that what happens?
Yeah, it's basically an open diff with a couple of clutch packs on each side, so it's still very easy to weld up.
The fuel tank's not meant to leak,
cool.
I don't reckon.
That's a nice feature.
When we bought the car, it only had this much fuel in it, so I reckon the owner knew, but once we fill it up, now it's leaking.
Leaks there.
Being that all of this is out.
But yeah, that's definitely a tank job. The diff bushes have been installed incorrectly because see how the bolt's been touching the tank? It could rub through, yeah. So it probably actually had Ford bushes reinstalled at some point. They've put them too far forward in the subframe and that results in the tank being rubbed.
Yeah.
So that's a bad time. But we're going to fix that today.
Amazing. Imagine 15 years ago when we were working on whatever we were working on, there was probably some Subarus, some shitty Nissans and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Imagine looking into a crystal ball and it's now 2025 and you and I are standing under a Ford Falcon and somewhat excited about it.
Didn't you like famously say you'd never do a Falcon or a Commodore?
I'll edit that bit out.
It's true, I was never that keen to make a Commodore or a Falcon drift car because there were better options for less, but the main word here is were. It is now rare to see people drifting their JDM Heroes because those cars themselves are worth way more than they used to be, plus parts are really expensive and often hard to get if you hit a wall. The reason that Falcons and Commodores have become the drift chariots of choice is not just because the vehicles themselves are relatively cheap, but these models were so common in Australia that everyone has parts for them, which makes it really easy to call a local wrecker and get pretty much everything you need. Our main task here is to release the diff from the subframe because we're going to weld the gears together. Yes, there are expensive aftermarket options available, but in the true spirit of DIY, we're just going to blast the insides of it with liquid metal. We also need to replace the diff bushes and pretty much every other component on this subframe because it is thrashed. This should drastically improve the car's performance, handling and longevity. But now, let's weld up this diff.
This here is our rear differential. Now normally if your car's going around a corner like this, the outside wheel, because it is going a further distance than the inside wheel, is travelling faster. But in our case, we want them both travelling at the same speed, which will make our drifts more predictable and more skiddy. So the most cost-effective way of doing that is going inside here where these gears are and getting a welder and literally going zip, zip, zot, zot, and then we'll be all set up for some mad skids.
So you probably won't be surprised to find out that this car has had a hard life, as recently witnessed by some videos that have surfaced on the internet from one of the previous owners in Western Australia, driving the car in a way that lives up to the stereotype of Ford Falcon owners. Once we've successfully undone years' worth of engineering advances by welding up the diff, now it's time to turn our attention back to the rear subframe. I'm taking to it with a Ryobi reciprocating saw, which is often used for demolition, but in my case, I'm using a blade for removing the diff bush rubbers and then a metal blade for removing the collars, which are pressed in so they need to be sliced and then bashed out. And yes, it takes ages. You can also use these reciprocating saws for wood, masonry tiles, and even branches by swapping out the blades. It's a very handy tool to have around, as is our battery-powered Ryobi shop vac. It's got heaps of power and is surprisingly quiet. A combination of our demo saw, vacuum, hammers, and a lot of bashing stuff eventually gets the job done, so we can replace the whole lot with a Whiteline kit.
I'm going to knock any burrs off we've created from cutting and using chisels and stuff in this bore, because anything that we will leave is going to grab on the bush and then make it potentially go not square and not be fun.
Once it's cleaned up, we can replace absolutely everything, then seal up the diff, connect it to the subframe, and put everything back in the car. With the rear subframe complete and almost ready to go back in the car, the next thing I need to find is a replacement fuel tank.
Oh, g'day, mate. I'm after a fuel tank for a BA Falcon sedan. Wondering if you've got something there?
Yes, I got one, mate.
Oh, perfect. Okay, cool. I'll come and get it. And how much is that?
Mate, it'll be $100.
We got a fuel tank for $100, which sounds like a bargain to me. But they said I can't get down there in the next hour because they're having lunch. So we've got to wait an hour and then we can go pick it up.
$100 and available in an hour. Now, just to give that some context, a second-hand Skyline tank in Australia is probably going to cost you around $2,000, and a 180SX tank probably around $1,500. So yes, I'm fully on board with being able to get cheap parts for your car from your local wrecker, because this is not something we can usually do with our oddball array of nuggets. Try buying a part for your Nissan March Super Turbo or your VW Up GTI in Australia and see how far you get. Not very far. Just another reason that builds the case for me slowly coming around to the fact that the Ford Falcon is the best vehicle ever made. And no filthy turbos. I've swapped over the fuel pump and hanger assembly into the new tank, which has gone into the car, and now that that's been wired and plumbed, the rear can go back into its rightful place, sending all the power also to its rightful place, the rear wheels. Does your Camry do that? No, it does not. And yes, you can quote the random JDM variant that came out for a little while that was rear-wheel drive, but nobody actually owns one of them, except for a few oddballs that you might see in the comments below, but they probably don't actually own one at all. Now we can start installing the good stuff. The replacement arms and the main event, our Shockworks suspension, which Chris built for me specifically for this build. How good is that?
All of the work on the rear of the car is now done except for the rear sway bar, which we've got to bolt in. The welded diff is in. Obviously the whole rear subframe is there, and unfortunately we did have that leaking fuel tank, but this was the best time to change it. $100, Ford parts for the win. Our exhaust, of course, is looking absolutely fantastic, and up the front, this is all done now as well. So we've got our sway bar here, all of our suspension components are in there. So we still need to put some oil in some things, and there's a hydraulic handbrake on the way. But when you've got a mad drift car, you know what else you need? You need some mad wheels. And where do you buy your wheels from? Facebook Marketplace, of course. So I got this set for cheap. This was $1,000 for 4. This is an 18 by 10, and this is an 18 by 9.5, so it's a staggered set. With a square setup, this would have a 275 tyre on it, but we put a 245 on there to help it fit, so it's got a little bit of stretch there as well. So we've got a set of 4 of those, but I want them to look kind of snazzy, so I went and got some colour match paint, and this is the Ryobi Hyper Green.
The Falcon has a 5x114.3 stud pattern, which means heaps of JDM fitment wheels are compatible with it. It looks like these wheels were black originally, and the previous owner has painted them and done a pretty good job. I'll be giving them a good scuff and clean to help the new paint stick, and I honestly have no idea what this is going to look like, but I do have high hopes. A quick hack if you're painting wheels at home that already have tyres fitted is to use some playing cards to mask off the rubber. I'm using some MCM cards that are available on our website. This is a fairly quick and easy way to get them painted and can be used in conjunction with my skate technique. That's skate and paint combined, a technique I developed in LA a few years back while working on the Subaru. The first coat is some Prep It, which will give me a nice clean base for my colour, and I'm speeding up the drying process by using a Ryobi heat gun to help it cure. Then it's time to lay on my first coat and see what the colour looks like for the first time. I'm starting with the inside of the barrel, and I've got to say, the colour match is absolutely exquisite. So now I can move on to the face of the wheel and get these painted up and ready to put on the car.
Okay, so the wheels are done, and I reckon it looks fantastic. There's a real thing with like drift cars of trying to make the wheels as bright and neon as possible, and in our case, it might just be something that takes off. It could be the next big thing in the drift scene, but Ryobi Hyper Green wheels, that looks fantastic.
While I've been busy painting the wheels, my mate Benny has been installing a very important modification which he also has on his Ford Falcon drift car, and that is a hydraulic handbrake. Installed inside the cabin, this is an inline system that will hack into the car's existing hydro setup and separate the rear wheels from the front when this handle is pulled. The main benefits here include precise and consistent control when maintaining and when initiating drifts, and completely removes the necessity of using the cable-operated handbrake during drifts. We will keep the factory handbrake installed though for normal braking duties and for moving the car around. But once everything's installed, we can bleed the system and then it's ready to go.
So Benny has just finished installing this hydraulic handbrake. Now let me quickly give you a rundown of how this works. Now the normal handbrake or e-brake runs from some cables and that goes down to the back. Whereas when you stomp your foot down here, that is a hydraulic system that via hydraulic pressure is braking all 4 wheels. Now this one here has been installed in line. So instead of having to lock up the rear wheels only with cable, now we can do it hydraulically. But that also means we get better braking, right? Because it's using a different braking system on the rear compared to that.
Yeah, so the original park brake in a Falcon and a lot of other cars uses an integral drum brake inside the rear disc. It's actually, from my understanding, an Australian design way back in the day. And it's one of the better systems, but the biggest downfall with cable e-brake or handbrake is the cable stretches. The other issues you have is the backing plates can bend. You can bend lever arms. So taking all of that out of the equation as far as in a motorsport application with a hydraulic handbrake like this, it's just much easier to operate. There are 2 different versions of hydraulic too. You can either have an inline system like we've installed today or a twin caliper setup. Twin caliper setup's more for like a pro car. This is your entry-level good fun setup, and it's also way more cost-effective than a twin caliper setup. It's like a third of the cost.
Yeah, and also way more ergonomic as well because you're going from gear changes. The space now between here is, you know, an inch or 2 compared to having to drop all the way down here to kind of get to there and back to there. So still the system gets bled the same way as you would normally bleed the brakes, which I guess keeps it simple. And generally, like you've been drifting with a hydraulic brake for a while now, like what's the main difference you've noticed when actually driving?
It's actually the position is probably the best thing because especially when you get in like more of a motorsport orientated seat where it's got some bolsters, trying to get your hand actually on this, it's very awkward. Whereas having the vertical handbrake, you can just pull it, your arm's not interfering with the bolster or anything like that. So if you do in future want to change the seat, you're definitely going to be having a much better time using that rather than trying to struggle with the original park brake.
The wheels are on and they look amazing, and the local Tyre Power is letting us use their equipment during the lunch break so that Chris can use his wealth of knowledge to set up the car, dialing out the excess negative camber from lowering and then increasing the caster in the front. Because we've installed so many adjustable parts from the Whiteline gear to the Shockworks Coilovers, he's going to be able to fine-tune it with minute detail to best suit this car for sliding. And with more power comes more braking responsibility, so the front end is getting a full upgrade, including calipers from an FG XR6 Turbo, upgraded DBA rotors, pads and braided brake lines. The rear is also getting an upgraded pad, which should be better suited to the kind of instant lock that I'll be subjecting them to. And with all of that complete, it's time to head down to Haltech to install our ECU to get a tune running, so then we can finally see just how much power we've made after all of this work.
We were lucky enough to be able to get a patch harness for this Falcon from Hootens Harnesses. Here at Haltech, we don't make a direct plug-in for it, but a whole bunch of dealers make a whole bunch of really cool adapter harnesses to all different cars. One of the different things about the Fords that we find a little bit unusual is that the ignition module. So all of these cars have got ignition coils. There's also a thing called an ignition module. Think of it like a really fast switching relay. The engine management system turns the igniter or the ignition module or the power transistor, whatever you want to call it, on and off. Then this thing fires the ignition coil. Think of it as kind of sits in between the ECU and the coil. Sometimes it's built into the top of the coil, like a Yaris coil or an R35, something like that. In this particular case, this car had the ignition modules built into the factory computer. We've since replaced that, so we need to use an external ignition module if we want to run the factory coils. So, in it goes. All right, so I've spent a little bit of time with the pinout document that comes with the patch harness. So I've gone through and looked at each individual wire, then I've assigned it in the ECU. I've set up the trigger system to suit this engine. I've gone through and put a rough fuel, rough ignition map, sort of guessed rough injector dead times, rough injector flow rates. And now, the moment of truth, which after you do a full wire up on a car or after you put a patch harness in a car, there's always bound to be some teething issues or bits and pieces that just need touching up. On this thing, it is a patch harness for this model car. I've calibrated the throttle pedal, I've calibrated the throttle body, I've crossed my fingers. All right, it's a bit rich, but That is exciting. The tacho's working, so that tells me that we've got CAN communication between the ECU and the car, so the body control module and all the cluster. It's time to make some noise and get a tune into this thing.
Our goal here is to get the car running as well as we can with Scotty's tuning wisdom, and then our final power run is going to be back at the original dyno in Castle Hill where we did our baseline, because that is going to give us the most scientifically accurate comparison result.
Okay, here we go.
The Falcon sounds absolutely incredible, and Scotty's happy with the baseline tune. So now it's time to head back to Castle Hill so the boys can put it on the dyno and give it the final tickle. The true measure of this car will be how well it drifts, but of course we all want to know how much power it makes. So let's do this.
So we've ended up with 250 kilowatts at the wheels, up from 196. You can see the stock power run here in green. There is the modified power run there in red. Peak power increase of 50 kilowatts, which is around a 25% increase. But even down low at 3,000 RPM, we've seen an increase of maybe 20 to 30 kilowatts at the wheels. Now, for those of you out there that have a modern turbocharged engine, you can get those same kind of gains for around $1,000. Plug a laptop in and go zippity-doo-dah, and you will probably get 25% extra power. For us, it's been a lot of time, a lot of work. We've thrown maybe around $20,000 worth of parts at this car. So I bought it for 12, had $20,000 worth of parts, and now it is probably worth around $14,000. So it begs the question, why? Well, I wanted to do something different, and also historically, this is how you make power with V8s. You got to bolt stuff into them. You've got to pull them apart. You've got to put in a little bit of effort. You have to earn every single kilowatt. That is the nature of the beast. Now, of course, you could cheat. You could put a supercharger on there. You could put a turbocharger on there, but it's not pure. It is cheating, and we want to keep this car as pure as possible. And in fact, the true metric of this car's success is not just how much power is on this page. No, it's how the car slides. All of our effort and attention has gone into making sure this car will be properly controllable under sliding, under skidding, and at speed. And on that note, I want to say a massive thank you to Chris from Shockworks, who came up here from Melbourne. He built these coilovers specifically for this car and then came up here to set the car up. So a massive thank you to him. I also want to say thank you to the team out at Castle Hill Performance. So that's Dale, also Chris, the wizard behind the welder, and of course Anthony as well. And a shout out to Scotty from Haltech, who tuned this car. And by the way, he also tuned it with two-step and rolling anti-lag, which is very, very exciting. A massive thank you to Benny from Benny's Custom Works. He's put a lot of time in developing his Drift Falcon, so I really appreciate him coming up and helping me with mine. And lastly, a big thank you to the team at Ryobi Australia. So a massive thank you to Shell and to Alicia and to Sarah for getting behind this project. And next episode, we're going to take it for a skid. We'll see if it was all worth it. It feels like we've been working on this car for 6 months. It's only been 3 weeks, and I cannot wait to get behind the wheel and give it a proper skid. And next episode, I'm going to show you how awesome it sounds. You want to hear that rolling anti-lag? You want to hear that two-step? Do you want to wait till next episode? Or do you want to have a quick little listen now? Go on then. Go on then. You've hung around. You're still here at the end. Let's have a quick little listen. Also, a massive thank you to James Gregg behind the camera. He and I have spent more time in this Falcon than you would probably like to imagine, and it's enough to keep us going for a lifetime. All right, have a listen to this.